Hey, Shalom, Israel. Most High in Christ blessed. This is Brother Joab, and I'm here and I wanted to touch on the topic of pledging allegiance and the national anthem and why it is against Scripture. So, because there's been a lot of heat on calling Kaepernick and Brandon Marshall for what they're doing. And how Brandon Marshall actually lost his endorsement because he did not stand up and put his hand on his heart for the national anthem. So I wanted to explain it from a scriptural point of view, that how the brothers are not wrong, and how we're going to get into the history of where the national anthem came from and the Pledge of Allegiance, and why us as Israelites should not be putting our hand on our hearts or taking any pledges or any vows. So we're going to, well, first, I want to get the definition of pledge before I get into the scriptures real quick. So I went here, this Google pledge and definition, and the first one that popped up, it says, a solemn promise or understanding. And in the synonyms, it says a promise, undertaking, a vow, a word, a commitment, an oath. So those are the synonyms for pledge, and the definition was a solemn promise or undertaking. So without further ado, let's get into what the scriptures say and what the law is on vows and oaths in Numbers chapter 30. I'm going to start at verse 1. I'm going to read the whole chapter, but I'm going to start at verse 1. Numbers chapter 30, verse 1. And it says, and Moses spake unto the heads of the tribes concerning the children of Israel. That's you blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans today, because you are the children of Israel. Saying, this is the thing which the Lord have commanded. So the Most High God gave Moses straight commandments, and he gave these commandments to the children of Israel. And these are the commandments that we're supposed to be following and keeping till this day. And it says, verse 2 says, if a man vow a vow, a pledge, a promise. Remember, we just read the definition of what a pledge is, and in case you forgot, is a solemn promise or undertaking. And it says the synonyms are a promise, undertaking, or a vow. So I'm going to read verse 2 again. It says, if a man vow a vow, if a man pledge a pledge unto the Lord, or swear an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceedeth out of his mouth. If a woman also vow a vow unto the Lord, and bind herself by a bind, being in her father's house in her youth, and her father hear her vow, and her bond wherein will she have bounded her soul, and her father shall hold his peace at her, then all her vows shall stand, and every bond wherewith she have bound her soul shall stand. But if her father disallow her in the day that he heareth not any of her vows, or of her bonds wherewith she have bound her soul, shall stand, and the Lord shall forgive her, because her father had disallowed. See, that's how important bonds, vows, and oaths were back in the day. The father had the authority to approve his daughter's vow or disapprove a vow. So that's how strong the male authority was in the house. In Israel, we need to get back to this perspective of letting the man be in charge of the house. So it says right here that if the father overheard the daughter making a vow, if he approved it, okay, you're good. But if he heard it and said, no, that's crazy, and he disannulled it, so that's the father's word has the last stand. So the man in the house can take away the vow or approve the vow. So we keep reading. Verse 6. And if she had a husband at all, when she vowed or uttered out of her lips, wherewith she bound her soul, and her husband heard it, and he held his peace at her, and the day that he heard it, then her vow shall stand, and her bonds wherewith she bound her soul shall stand. But if her husband disallowed her on the day that he heard it, and he make her a vow which she vowed, and that which she uttered with her lips, wherewith she bound her soul, of none effect, and the Lord shall forgive her. So it says that this the husband, same thing. If he hears his wife making a vow and he approves of it, he doesn't say anything, she can make that vow. But if the husband hears it and says, no, that's not a vow that she should be doing, the Most High can take it away. And it says that the Lord shall forgive the woman for making that vow, because the husband took it away. But every vow of a widow and of her that is divorced, wherewith they have bound their souls, shall stand against her. So if a woman is single or widow divorced, it says the vow that she makes, she's going to have to make that vow because she's a single woman and she's grown, so she doesn't have a father to take away the vow from her. And if she vowed in her husband's house, bound her soul by an oath, and her husband heard it and held his peace and disallowed her not, then all her vows shall stand, and every bond wherewith she shall bond her soul shall stand. So basically saying if she has a husband and he heard it and said disallowed her not, so that she's going to have to live by that oath or whatever the oath that she brought, because that is the commandment. But it says, but if her husband have utterly made them void on the day he heard them, then whatsoever proceeded out of her lips concerning her vows or concerning the bond of her soul shall not stand. For her husband have made them void, and the Lord shall forgive her. Every vow and every binding oath to afflict the soul, her husband may establish it, or her husband may make it void. So husbands can approve, or this is saying the same thing, repeating itself, saying the husband can approve or disapprove the vow. But if her husband altogether hold his peace at her from day to day, then he establish all her vows or all her bonds which are upon her. He confirmeth them, because he held his peace at her in that day that he heard them. But if he shall in any ways make them void after he heard them, then he shall bear her iniquity. These are the statutes which the Lord commanded Moses between a man and his wife, between a father and his daughter, being yet in her youth in her father's house. So like I said, the husband has the authority to take the vows and disannul the vows, basically is what it's saying. And it's saying that if you hold your peace and the woman makes a vow and her vow is something crazy, if you don't speak up on it, you're going to bear the vow of your daughter, the sins of the daughter or the your wife, if her vow is something crazy. So you gotta, that's why I said you gotta pay attention on what the vows. But this is in Numbers 30 for the Old Testament. We're going to get in more on what we are supposed to do with vows today after Christ. So we're going to get into that in a little bit. I want to read a couple more scriptures before we get into it. So I'm going to go to Daniel's real quick, the book of Daniel's chapter 3, because remember this is going into Pledge of Allegiance and the national anthem, and why we are not to pledge allegiance and why we are not to do the national anthem. So the Pledge of Allegiance, I was doing some research on it and I looked it up, and it was composed by Colonel George Balch in 1887, and it was revised by Francis Bellamy in 1892, and it was formally adopted by the Congress as our pledge for the United States in 1942. So this is the first edition of the Pledge of Allegiance. And it says, I pledge allegiance to my flag and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So this was written in 1892. Mind you, we had just got out of slavery in 1865. And the flag was around in the 1700s. So while we were still in slavery, they was telling us we wasn't even allowed to pledge allegiance because that wasn't our flag in the first place. Remember, we were the flag was made in 75 by wherever that, I forgot that woman's name that sold up the flag. But it says, I pledge allegiance. This was the first edition of the Pledge of Allegiance. It says, I pledge allegiance to my flag. So that means when you pledge allegiance to America's flag, which is not even your flag in the first place, because this country is not our country. This country belonged to our Native American brothers and sisters before they came and took it away from them, and they put their flag on this land and claimed this land as theirs, which is not their land. This is our Native brothers and sisters' land. So it says, I pledge allegiance to my flag and to the republic for which it stands. The republic for which it stands for what? Rape, murder, pillaging of our Native brothers and sisters, the enslavement of the so-called African Americans, which we are the Israelites according to the Bible. So what are you pledging allegiance to? This flag that's not ours, this white man's flag. It says for the republic. What does the United States, what was the foundation built on the United States that that made it rise into power? Slavery, murder, war. So you're pledging an oath to this country that stands for the annihilation of a race that's not them. If you're not fair skinned or blue eyes or whatever white person, the country is not accepting you. So it says you pledging, you standing up strong in school, because in school they used to make us pledge of allegiance and sing the national anthem in school. So you making an oath, a swear to this country that was built on killing you, and it didn't adopt the God and everything in the United States until 1954. It says, this is the updated one, the one that they use today in the so-called schools and everything. It says, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. So not only are you pledging allegiance to that flag, you are now making your allegiance to America. Why would you want to pledge your allegiance to America? This country has killed your fathers, foremothers, and this was barely, remember, this was 1619, which slavery started a little bit before that, but they recorded the transatlantic slave trade in 1619 to 1865. And in some states, slavery didn't end until the 1940s. You can look it up. In Brazil, even in South America, slavery didn't end until probably about 50, 60 years ago. They still had slaves in Brazil. They still had slaves in Suriname and Ghana and stuff like that. So we got to do our research, Israel, and look this stuff up. Cuba, they still have slaves over there. So is it Chile and stuff like that. In Central America, Caribbeans too. So even in the southern states, some slavery didn't end until the 1940s. So we're pledging allegiance to America, to this flag that was built on the enslavement of our people and the murder, the genocide. They almost wiped out our Native American brothers and sisters. And we celebrate Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, those days, and celebrating the death of our brothers and sisters. Like this is Stockholm syndrome at its finest, that we need to escape these mental chains and come back to the realization of who we are as a people, because we've been brainwashed so bad that it's ridiculous. So the pledge, it was changed, to get back to the topic, the pledge was changed in 1945, and it says, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. So now it's pledging allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and it says, and the republic for which it stands, which is still built on murder, rape, war, pillaging of another nation, which it stands, one nation, indivisible. So it says you cannot divide this nation. But wasn't the nation divided during the Civil War? Isn't it still not divided today? With liberty and justice for all. For liberty for who? Because when this flag was made, we were still slaves. So who was the liberty for? Oh, the Europeans that came across the Atlantic Ocean and settled on the East Coast and Virginia and Plymouth Rock and all those stuff, Massachusetts, New York. When they colonized, the Pilgrims came over and killed the Native Americans and built their land, Jamestown and stuff like that. So who's the justice for? Who was the liberty for? So why are you pledging allegiance to this flag? That's not even your flag in the first place. You a sojourner in this land. You were brought over here as slaves and captives, and now they let you go 150 something years ago. Slavery just ended in 1865. It hasn't even been 200 years since slavery ended. It hasn't even been it hasn't even been 200 years. 1865. It hasn't even been 200 years. So it says, "And justice for all." Justice for who? We can read the news, watch the news. We're not getting justice. Not if you're on white privilege. Yeah, then you have justice. So, Colin Kaepernick, Brandon Marshall, those brothers are doing the right thing. They just don't know that they're Israel yet. And Lord's will that they find out. Most I put the spirit on them to doing this. Lord's will, He'll put the spirit on them to understand the true cause of it and come back to their nationality as Israelites according to the scripture. So we're going to get into, because this happened in the scriptures before. I'm going to show you that in Daniel chapter 3. Because I want to get back into the scriptures. I don't want to do too much talking. I want to get back into the scriptures. So Daniel chapter 3. This one is going into the national anthem. I'm going to start at verse 1. Daniel 3 and verse 1 says, Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 80 cubits, and the breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. So this was when Daniel and them were taken captives into Babylon, and they were serving under King Nebuchadnezzar. So the history you can read about on your own, but I just wanted to get certain parts of this so we can understand that nothing is new under the sun, and this stuff has been happening to our brothers and sisters. So I just wanted to show that this was Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian captivity with Daniel and them. So I'm going to jump down to verse 4 and says, Then an herald cried aloud, To you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages. So this man came and he's about to set a decree that's coming from Nebuchadnezzar. That is, at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, pastry, dulcimer, and all the kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king hath set up. So this is nothing new under the sun. This is saying, when you hear this music and all this stuff playing, you're supposed to fall down and worship the image that Nebuchadnezzar built. It's the same thing standing up for the national anthem, standing up for the Pledge of Allegiance. The song comes on, oh say can you see, whatever. You're supposed to stand up, put your hand on your heart, or salute, or foolishness to an idol. And we're going to get into the history of the national anthem too, with Francis Scott Key. So it says, And whoso falleth not down and worship shall the same hour be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. So there was commanded, if you do not stand up and or bow down when this music comes, you're gonna get put to death. And that's what now is going on. It's not per se we're getting put to death here now physically in America, but now it's you can't play. You losing endorsements. Now you called a nigger. Now you go back to Africa. First of all, we didn't ask to come over here in the first place. So why are you saying, oh, you're not patriotic? Yeah, we're not patriotic. This country killed our ancestors. They raped our women. They killed our kids. They stashed our kids to pieces and rocks and fed them to the dogs. So yeah, we're not patriotic. We're not standing up and saluting the flag that's going around to Iraq and Afghanistan and destroying villages and raping those kids over there and burning them alive. So yeah, we're not patriotic. Fighting a war for oil and heroin. So yeah, we're not patriotic. Yeah, we're not standing up and saluting this flag for justice for all. Justice for who? Justice for the white man. There's no justice for black man in America. So Israel, yeah, support these brothers that's not taking the pledge and that's not saluting the national anthem. There's no patriotic here. They just let Negroes join in the military barely 100 years ago. World War I, Negroes is in the military, cooks only. World War II, Negroes is in the military, cooks only. We didn't start getting higher ranks until after barely the 50s. All you was is just a mess cook, but you was you happy to serve. Patriotic. Patriotic for what? Serving your dishes to the white man? Come on, y'all. This is history. Just look it up. I'm not making this stuff up. So I'm gonna jump down to verse 15. Now if you be ready, that what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, pastry, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made. Well, but if ye worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is it that God shall deliver you out of my hands? And so I'm gonna keep reading, and it says, So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thy hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. So these brothers stood firmly for the Lord and said, we are not bowing down to this national anthem for you and serve your golden idol that you built, because we serve our Lord, the God of Israel, who redeemed us out of Egypt. And it says, but if it not be now that, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. So he was mad. He said, what you mean you're not going to bow down to my national anthem and worship my golden calf? You damn Israelites, what's wrong with you? Don't you know I took care of you I took you from your home and brought you to Babylon. Don't that sound familiar? I took care of you. I made Daniel one of my governors. Don't you know I'm taking care of y'all? What you mean you're not going to bow down and listen to this music and worship me and my music? Don't that sound familiar? Colin Kaepernick, Brandon Marshall, not pledging allegiance, not doing the national anthem. You ungrateful nigger. You unpatriotic nigger. Military fought for your freedom. Nothing is new under the sun. And it says, and he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their hose, their hats, and other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent, and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. All praises. Where was that? And slew them. And then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, and rose up in haste, and spake, and said unto his counselor, Did not we cast three... Oops. Hold on, I'm sorry, Israel. Yeah, okay, so verse 23. And these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound into the midst of the burning furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, and rose up in haste, and spake, and said unto his counselors, Did not we cast three men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, True, O king. He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. All praises. That is Christ. That is the Messiah. He went in and saved and redeemed those 3 brothers out of the furnace. Why? Because they stood stiffly for the Lord, Israel. So that's what we have to understand. Once we have faith, and once we understand that if we keep these laws and commandments with the faith of Christ, that he is going to redeem us, no harm could come, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. That's scripture. So we have to put our faith in the Most High, that he is going to deliver us out of the hands of our enemies. But we can't waver and go back and forth like a double-minded man, like it says in James chapter 1, and a ship that's tossed to and fro, beaten up by the winds in the sea, swaying. You got to stand firm. You can't get knocked around. You can't be shadow boxing, bobbing, weaving. You got to stand firm. If that hit comes, you got to take it. And it says, Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace, and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, ye servants of the Most High God, come forth and come hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth of the midst of the fire, and the princes, governors, and captains, and the king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men, upon whose body the fire had no power, nor was their hair of the head singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. So the Most High delivered them out of the midst of the furnace. It said they didn't even smell like fire. Nothing was singed. Nothing was burned. The coat, the clothes, the hair, nothing smelled like fire. It's like they didn't even go into the furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach. So back then they knew that the God of Israel was only dealing with Israel, and he was not the God of every other nation. So now where do we get the misconception that the Most High is the God of the whole world? Babylonians had their own God. They worship their gods, their deities, Baal and all them foolish gods, which are nothing. They knew that the Most High God was the God of Israel. That's why he said, Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the God of Shemrach. He didn't say, Blessed be the God of the world. He said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who have sent his angel, which was Christ, and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word, and yielded their bodies, and they might not serve nor worship any god except their own God. So we're not to worship and bow down and pledge allegiance to the national anthem and to America. No, because this is not our home. Our home is Israel, Jerusalem. That is our home, where the Most High set the king, King David. That is our home, Israel, not America. Not Babylon the Great, because it says an extension of Babylon, which is going to be destroyed. So let's get let's get swearing in the Apocrypha, which is part of the King James Bible. I'm gonna read something real quick for all you who don't know what the Apocrypha is, who don't believe in the Apocrypha. Apocrypha, back in the original 1611 Bible, the Apocrypha was included. In the 1700s, the Protestant Church removed the Apocrypha out of the Bible. So I'm gonna read something real quick. From this is the regular King James Bible, and it says, "The Holy Bible, containing the Old and New Testament, translated out of the original tongues and with proper translation, diligently compared and revised by His Majesty's special command," which was King James. No, King James did not write the Bible. Yes, King James was a black man, but that's a different topic. And yes, King James was an Israelite man, and he had the Bible translated. He did not write. He did not have a hand in writing the Bible. He had man translate the Bible. Appointed to be read in churches. Authorized King James Version. So that's all I was just reading in the Bible. So I'm going to read out of the Apocrypha, the first page of the Apocrypha. It says, the Apocrypha. It says, translated out of the original tongues and with the former translations diligently compared and revised by His Majesty's special command. Wait a minute, we just read that in the King James Bible. Appointed to be read in churches. So it says the Apocrypha is appointed to be read in churches, but why don't they read this book in the church? Foolishness, Israel. We gotta come back to it. We get back into it. Figure these things out. So swearing, making pledges. It says, Sirach, Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha, Sirach chapter 23, verse 9, and it says, "Accustom not thy mouth to swearing, neither use thyself to the naming of the Holy One. For as a servant that is continually beaten shall not be without a blue mark, so he that sweareth in the name of God continually shall not be faultless. A man that uses much swearing shall be filled with iniquity, and the plague shall never depart from his house. And if he shall offend, his sin shall be upon him. And if he acknowledge not his sin, he maketh a double offense. And if he swear in vain, he shall not be innocent, but his house shall be full of calamity." And that is, oh, I swear to do this, I swear that, I swear this. That's making swears, making all these oaths that you can't uphold. It says that sin is going to be upon you, and it's going to be a double offense if you don't acknowledge that. If you keep swearing and keep swearing and keep swearing. The scriptures say, "Accustom not their mouth to swearing, to making oaths." Oh, I promise I'm going to do this for you. No, I got you this day. I promise I'm going to get you on Monday. The scriptures say don't do that. It says, "Accustom not thy mouth to swearing, neither use thyself to the naming of the Holy One." That's another subject that we also need to get into, but as time, I'm just going to touch on a little bit. It says, "Accustom yourself not to using the name of the Holy One." So you're not even supposed to be rarely even speaking the name of the Most High. When you read in the New Testament, you don't even read one time that Christ called the Father by His real name. He says we call Him Father, the Most High God. He doesn't stress, oh, you got to call Him Yehuda, Yahweh, whatever the names is that you want to say. Jehovah, whatever, Yahweh, Ahia, Shai. You're not even supposed to be, even though if those are they are the correct names or not. The scriptures say, "Accustom not their mouth to even naming the Holy One." So call Him Most High God. Call Him the Father. There's still power in that. But that's a different topic, Israel. So now I'm going to go back. I'm going to go into the New Testament. And see what Christ says about swearing and making oaths. In Matthew 5, real quick. Matthew chapter 5. And it says, Matthew 5 and 33. "Again, ye have heard that it has been said of them of old time, Thou shalt not forswear thyself, but shalt perform unto the Lord thine oaths." Verse 34, "But I say unto you," so Christ is saying, swear not at all, make not an oath at all, make not a promise at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne. That's what black people love to do. Man, I swear on, I swear to, I'm not going to say it, but you know what I'm saying. Black people love, that is what we love to say. And Christ is saying not to do that, because that is God's throne. It says, "Nor by the earth, for it is His footstool." So we're not supposed to swear on anything on this earth, and black people love to do that. Man, on my mama, on stuff like that. That's built in us, and Christ is saying not to do that stuff. neither by Jerusalem, so neither by the holy city, for it is the city of the great king. So we're not even supposed to swear on anything in Israel, the great city Jerusalem. It says, neither shalt thou swear by thy head. So you're not even supposed to swear on anything on your body, the head, because thou cannot make one hair white or black, because you can't change your features. It says, the Most High controls that stuff. It says, but let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay. For whatsoever is more than these cometh of evil. So let your communication be, yes, you can do it, or no, you cannot do it. Don't say, oh, I promise I'm going to get you on Monday. I promise I'm going to do this later. It's either yes, you can do it, or no, you can't do it. Anything else that proceedeth is evil. So we have to stand firm with our decisions, Israel, and that goes back into swearing a pledge of allegiance in the national anthem. Either yes, you're going to do it, or no, you're not going to do it. And don't make a pledge to this country. You're not supposed to be doing that. So either yes, you're going to serve America, which you're not supposed to, or no, you're not. Make a stand for it. No, you're not going to serve this country. You're not going to be patriotic because we're waiting on the Lord. So with that, Israel, man, I pray this quick lesson was edifying, and I pray that the Most High put the spirit on those brothers, Colin Kaepernick and Brandon Marshall, man, to wake up to their true nationality and come back to being Israelites. And may the Lord be with them, brothers, and maybe the Lord be with you all too, Israel. And with that, I'm going to say shalom. Most High in Christ bless.